Good evening. Let's pray with me. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Great Gurus, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yogananda, saints of all religions, dear friend and guide, Swami Kriyananda, we bow to you all with undying love, with eternal gratitude. Divine Mother, thank you for this spiritual family, for this life in God. Thank you for Swami Kriyananda, our divine guide and friend, and an exemplary disciple of our great Guru. Help us to live up to that example through our own discipleship, attunement, service and meditation, and love for God. We are ever thine. Om, peace. Amen. Just please take your seats, and just a brief overview this evening on this sacred occasion of Swamiji's 71st discipleship anniversary. 71 years ago today, he met Yogananda Ji in Los Angeles, and we'll just commemorate that beautiful occasion together this evening in this magnificent Temple of Light for the first time. I'll invite the choir up in just a moment, and then we've got 5 speakers this evening that have really given their life to this ray, and will just share with us, and just briefly, what I can only imagine is the tip of the iceberg, some of their inspiration from their time with Swamiji, whether personally or otherwise. Afterwards, we'll have a renewal of our discipleship vows, and of course, if you're not a disciple, you can just tune in or observe and listen to that sacred vow that we'll take in honor of Swamiji's own discipleship. And just a closing remark, while I have a captive audience, as I stand here in this temple with all of you on this occasion, it just strikes me, I can't imagine a different life other than this life in God, and none of this is possible without Swamiji. So I just, with all my heart, thank you, Swamiji, for all you have given us and continue to give us. I'll invite the choir up, please.
Life is a dream, time like a stream, carries our burdens away. Never despair, joys everywhere, love can befriend you today. Free from all care, like birds on the air, soar up our griefs and worries.
I think we all feel like as Badri so eloquently expressed it. I think each of us have and had an individual, very individual relationship with Swami, according to what our needs were. And thinking about it, the song says sometimes a friend helps us ascend. And I think, of course, Swami is a divine friend to all of us and is. For me, I think I saw him very much and do see him as a spiritual father. I had this strange karma of I was from South Carolina, and coming all the way to California in the 70s. It seemed like such a long way to come to Ananda. And the first time I came in 1975, turned out Swami was in Southern California, and got back the night before I left, and all I got to see of him was he gave Sunday service, but I knew I had to come back. So I came back the next summer, the summer of the fire, and found out that the whole week I was here, Swami wasn't here. But someone taught me into staying an extra 2 weeks so I could be here for Spiritual Renewal Week. And it was transformative. Swami was here for that whole week. Next summer came again, and the whole 2 weeks I was here, no Swami. But finally, in the later 70s, I got to spend some time with him. There was a conference at a place called Claymont, West Virginia, at what was then a Gurdjieff community. And there were people from it was a big New Age conference. And some of these names, you young people won't even know them, but people were there like Barbara Marx Hubbard and Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and Peter Caddy and Swami and just many, many people. And it was a big, very well organized conference. And there were I went up there with my ex-husband and 2 people from my meditation group, and there were only 2 people from Ananda Village traveling with Swami, so there weren't very many of us. And what shocked me was that how few people, in my mind, the talks that Swami gave were, of course, the most magnetic, most deep, most wonderful, inspiring. And yet, when people would break up and go to lunch, there were only a few of us following Swami. And that really did surprise me. That was the conference where Bucky Fuller spoke. And he was this little guy, and he was in his 80s, and they could not get him off the stage because he was so enthusiastic and so dynamic, and they kept saying, the session has ended. And Swami told that story many times in the future. He just loved his energy and enthusiasm. Well, finally, I got here to live in the 80s, and I had a little bit of, or maybe a whole lot of intellectual pride. And what I noticed was that when I had a very deep Southern accent, if you think I have one now, it was very deep then. And people would always make fun of it by imitating it. And I noticed that when they made fun of it and imitated it, they always used bad grammar. So if you're from the South, you're ignorant, I guess. I mean, and I didn't understand this. I mean, this is where William Faulkner and Eudora Welty and Willie Morrison, why do people think this? And then one time I was in a group setting with Swami, and he told a joke and made fun of a Southern accent in the joke. I was so indignant, Well, eventually I ended up in Portland, and I was part of the ministry team there. And when you're in a colony and you're part of the ministry team, Swami would come through, and you get to spend more time with him, really, than you did probably at the village. Well, it seemed like every time he came, he'd tell a joke with a Southern accent. And I would just be, and then finally, about the 3rd or 4th time, I thought, this is ridiculous. He tells jokes about accountants, and I don't get offended. And he tells jokes, about this group and that group, and I don't get offended. This is ridiculous. Next time, I'm not going to be offended. I am just going to laugh my little heart out. Of course, he never told another one in front of me. Now, did he do that consciously? I don't know. I just know that when you were around Swami, the divine poured through him and gave us opportunities to learn. And when I think back over it, I think he gave me so much encouragement because that's what I needed. one time, I used to write him a lot of letters, a lot of us did. It would be really embarrassing, except that we have Sister Gyan Mata's book and her example of all the letters where she poured out her heart to Yogananda. But one time I said to Anandi, Swami hardly ever answers my letters. I was disappointed, and she said, oh, that's a good thing. If you get a lot of letters from Swami, it's because you need them. So I was thinking about that tonight, just thinking of all you who didn't get to meet him in the body or only knew him briefly. See, you just don't need it. And we have different karmas and different needs. Swami leaned over to me one time, and this again was in Portland. He asked me a question about someone who left the path. And I answered it, and I didn't have any charge about this person, but he leaned over and he looked me right in the eye and he said, you know, sometimes people have just one thing that's holding them back. And when they overcome that, that's it. And I thought, okay, don't judge, don't judge, don't judge. There were so many opportunities, so many thoughtful things. When Swami had his hip replaced one time, I went over to different people would go sit with him to do things like make him tea. And I think all I'd ever did was make him tea and give him a foot massage or something. But meanwhile, business is going as usual. People are coming in and out. And there was some discussion that went on. And it was really, it bothered me. I didn't agree with it at all. But I didn't say a thing about it. Later that evening, I got a phone call at home. And it was Swami. And, oh gosh, what is it, Swami? He said, it bothered you when we were talking about such and such, didn't it? And I said, oh, why, yes, sir. And then he said, well, I don't want you to feel that way, and here's what. And I just thought, here he is. I'm supposed to be serving him because he had a hip replacement. He's thinking about me. It was such an example of, you know, a minister is a person who thinks of others, even when under stress. That was our theme for 1 year that he gave us. He just gave. So these other people have wonderful stories to tell you, so I won't take any more time, but I found a note from Swami that I just wanted to share this because I feel like we all can do this. And I don't even know what I'd written him about, but something that happened in the Portland Living Wisdom School. And he wrote back and he said, please congratulate all the teachers on my behalf. To have such tangible progress in my own lifetime has been possible only because of the deep faith and love you all have for what you're doing. It is this, more than anything else, that brings me joy. So deep faith and love, we can all do that in every little thing that we do, no matter how seemingly trivial. It's all for him.
My notes are a little bit smaller. We'll see the purpose of it later. So I met Swamiji at Superconscious Living Seminar in Sacramento in 1980. And later I heard from one of the members of the community that it was that this living seminar was a loss financially. I said, yes, but I'm here. So I thank Swamiji for taking the opportunity to get out as he did throughout his life as a disciple and spread Master's teachings. And it was the first time I met somebody that had teachings and a way of being that I could relate to. I was raised a Catholic, but it didn't, going to hell for eternity just didn't work for me. And, I knew God loved me because my parents loved me, no matter what I did. So I knew I couldn't go to hell for eternity. So when he presented Master's teachings, I said, well, this makes sense. I had been seeking something that made sense in this world for a long time. I think it was, met Swamiji when I was 36, I believe. Moved up here when I was almost 40. So But I spent the first few years in the Sacramento Center. And one time Swami was down there for our, Christmas program. And at that time, they didn't have a donkey, so I volunteered to be the donkey. And I came out, on all fours, and Swamiji petted me, and I felt very blessed, to do that. Anyway, he was always humorous. Serious teachings in a humorous way. And he presented it so that we could relate to it. That was Super Conscious Living Seminar, a very great success, in my opinion. One of the first projects I did with Swamiji was he called me over. He'd heard I'd done some landscaping and gardening work, and he needed the pool. He had an idea of a pool and landscaping to be done at the Hermitage. At that time, they had built they still were working on his house, his apartment down below, but the upper part had been built. Well, when I met him for the first time, I had been doing some construction in the community, and this is the size of the paper they showed me of what he had in mind. And so you can see why I have these notes. So the first time we went over roughly what he was looking at and what he kind of had envisioned. And then after that, we met 2 more times from what I recall. And I went back and did some scale drawings of what he might want. And this was something I'd always, when I did landscaping, I always enjoyed working with people who actually had an idea what they wanted. Because without that, it doesn't really have any meaning. And this landscaping, he knew what he wanted. He knew I'm sure he could see it in its full bloom. And so we would meet for tea, and we would usually sit and have some tea. Rosanna was there, so she had a lot of input too. And we kind of went over it. It was all different levels. At that time, it was just nothing but a sloped hill, fairly steep, in fact. So the pool was one of the things he really wanted this pool to look like, almost like it looks today. So and then he had an idea for a children's pool. Well, I had an idea that we put the children's pool up above, and then we're up where Babaji is now. But he definitely wanted it down below. So that was locked in, and then we went into, what kind of trees, and I had some ideas of trees. He didn't have, I'm sure you could see it, but he didn't necessarily know what trees were appropriate for that, the placement. But we worked it out, and then 3 months after we installed the landscaping, the pool people came and did the pool, and Ananda had a cat with a big bucket, and he brought in all the dirt, and we made all the terraces. We used whatever we could in materials. And when Swami came back, he had been gone for a couple of months, maybe 3. And I met him, and he seemed to be actually pleased with what I did, or with what we did, I should say. I did very little, but made sure that the plan was carried out. And So that was a wonderful experience. I had to actually tune into what Swami wanted. And I think that was the purpose of it for me, was to be able to understand that I needed to be in tune with Swamiji and with what he wanted. And so it was a great opportunity for me to learn that. Then Sharon and I got married in June 30th of that year. I think at that time we were actually working. No, we weren't. Swami actually married us, so we, for our wedding gift, he gave us a evening with him. And so we went over and meditated with him, had dinner with him, and sat out on the patio. He's very gracious and very, just there for us. And it was really wonderful. Very personable. And in an impersonal way, like Swami always was. But he knew us, and he always wanted to get to know us better, and I think that was part of helping us get to know him better. So, and then Earthsong, that's one of the places I worked. I think after I did the landscaping, I had one other construction job, and then I went to work at Earthsong. I was mainly the cook, but I was supposed to be the manager, quote. But everybody worked in those days. We all pitched in. And I'd always do quite a few, maybe 2 or 3 soups for the day. And then also the special. Well, one of the specials was cauliflower curry. And Swami loved that one. And so when he would come in, usually he'd come with a few people, maybe 6 at the most. And he'd come in usually a little bit after lunch hour, the rush hour kind of, and he would sit down and we would, I'd always go out and ask him later how the meal was. Well, most of the time he's very gracious about, it was really good and enjoyed the meal and how are you doing? But this one time, I was a bit in a rush. And so I was throwing together the cauliflower curry. And I didn't follow directions very well. It was in the Ananda cookbook, if you know that recipe. Very good recipe. One of my favorite curries. But anyway, long story short, I went out after to see. I was kind of a little timid that time too, I think, because I had an idea. I know he had the cauliflower curry. So he said, the cauliflower curry was okay, but next time you should follow the recipe closer. I said, yes, sir. And I think that was a great lesson for me, especially if you're going to run a business and people come in, they expect to be served what they were served before, if they're going to order it off a menu or a special. And when it isn't quite right, they're going to know it. So that to me was a very good lesson. And I think it's a lesson we all need to learn, is to pay attention, follow directions. And even if we've meditated for 30 or 40 years, be sure we energize, we do Mahamudra, we do the breathing exercises properly, the initial ones, and to follow directions so that we can have the right outcome. Thank you.
It was 1985. Swami had just written Christ Lives Oratorio. He was going to perform it with a group of us in Palo Alto. We all practiced our parts, the choir practiced, the instrumentalists practiced. None of us really knew what the heck we were doing. We did the best we could. Swami didn't hire, this was a project very dear to his heart, a very sacred piece of music, set of music. He did not hire a professional choir director, a professional choir, professional instrumentalist. Maybe out of 40 of us performing, there was one professional. And this was to be performed in Palo Alto, a very musically sophisticated area. This was not Colfax or Oroville. Not that they aren't musically sophisticated in their own way. So we went down and performed this wonderful oratorio. The flutist and I, the harpist, shaking in our boots the whole time. I don't know what was happening with the other instrumentalists, but it did not go perfectly. And I remember the man who played the trumpet at the very beginning, the beginning song, da, 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 da. He blew it the first couple notes. He had to start again. I don't know if he started again. Glaring mistakes and blaring mistakes. At the end, I think some of us who had been playing were pretty much just, oh, thank goodness it's over. But Swami, all I remember from him is, it was wonderful. Thank you so much, all of you, for putting your energy into this sacred piece. So many people felt such wonderful energy through it. I can see that this is going to be performed again and again and touch so many, many people. This was Swami. He had all of us filled with our follies, our faults, but he used us again and again and again. And that's what made us grow. His confidence in us, his patience. We were bumbling all the time. I remember playing the harp. Swami had bought this big harp. I had learned to play a little Celtic harp. He bought a small concert harp. And I was supposed to learn how to play his Egyptian music and the oratorio music. I didn't know how to practice. I didn't know where to find lessons, but I wanted to do it. And I remember going to Seva and saying, what if I can't get better? And she said, you do it anyways. What if I can't play things right? You do it anyways. Because she wouldn't say that to anyone, but because I was a disciple and because I was trying to grow and trying to tune into Swami, here was a gift and I could grow with it. As we performed the oratorio again, there was this one song that made my life miserable for years. It was called Galilee, a beautiful song, which Prashad plays beautifully, but it was terrifying for me. And mainly because it was the only song that played by itself in the oratorio, the only harp song. Usually I was playing with a flute, someone else to cover my mistakes. But this one I had to play by myself. After many times of bumbling my way through it and making big mistakes, I decided that I would just not play the hard part. So I played the first two sections, and then the last section I just stopped playing for a few oratorios. Now, let me go back and say that during all of this time, when I was trying to play the harp and couldn't play it very well, Swami never said a word of discouragement, a word of complaint. He never said, you need to practice more. He never said, that didn't come out very well. Not once. His patience was just phenomenal. At one point, I began to realize, okay, I think I'm good enough to play that last section again, and I can kind of make it simpler, arrange it so it's a little easier. So one last oratorio, I played the whole thing through. And I remember walking by Swami after it was all over and we were all relaxing, and I had kind of thought maybe he didn't notice I wasn't playing the whole thing through all this time. I don't know. And he said, "Jeannie, you played the whole song." Yes, sir, I did. I think all of us who lived with Swami during all of these past 40, 50 years felt that undying, the unconditional love that he had for all of us, that undying patience, the confidence that we could make the oratorio into what it is today. At one point, he had wanted it to be brought into the churches. He was thinking this would be a good way to bring meditation into the churches. He called it inner communion. We put out tons of energy to make that happen. We were all like his soldiers. We would just go out and kind of fly on his energy and make things happen. In the music world, it was a real blessing because we got to play the music along. We were always within the music as we were working to make things happen. He very easily changed directions when that didn't work out. Another wonderful example for us to see that we put our energy forward. The moment we see it's not going in the right direction, we change. So now the oratorio, many of you have sung in it. Most of you heard of it. Many of you have played instruments in it. You know that now it has become such a deep experience for us all, those who listen and those who sing in it and play in it. And we're still not professional, but we're professional devotees. And that's what Swami was trying to make of us. There was a story told to me by Roy, who was a man who lived here many years ago and lived in our Assisi Center for a while when Swami was staying there. Swami was living above the temple. Temple was right underneath him. Roy would bring Swami his dinner every evening. And every evening he'd walk up and he'd hear some guy singing in the temple, chanting in the temple. He had a terrible voice. It was off tune. And he kept thinking, I've got to tell this guy to not sing while Swami's up here. But it was a temple after all. Finally, after a number of times of doing this, Roy brought Swami's dinner up one last time, and he said, "Oh, Swami, about that man below," he was singing again, "about the man below chanting." And Swami said, "Isn't it sweet?" So here's someone who had no musical ability, and Swami saw his heart. And once again, that's what he saw in all of us, our hearts. We asked him in a music meeting in India around 2004, we said, "Swami, how do you handle it, listening to recordings that aren't perfect of your music? We know you hear your music perfectly. You know how it should sound. How do you deal with that when we sing it so imperfectly, we play it imperfectly? We've got these recordings that they don't have great sound." He said, "Well, you take the rough with the smooth." You have to consider the human element, saying that we're all human. If we were beyond human, we wouldn't be on this plane, most likely. And he said, for instance, when David Eby gathers all his string players together to perform, I can hear that the pitch is not right. I can hear that some of the violins are really, really off. But what is David going to do? Berate them for playing off? It's not important. It doesn't matter. And then we talked about how much we love singing his music, how it tuned us into Master, how it united us as a community. And he said, if that's what you're feeling, if that's what you're expressing, to me that has much, much more value than perfection. So we will, imperfect as we are, Master and Swami are still loving us and still guiding us in all that we do.
Hello, everyone. My name is Durga. I've been here for some years. And I have never met anyone like Swamiji. The compassion, the kindness, the courage, the creativity, the sense of wonder, the wisdom, the joy, the laughter. So many qualities that he had to help us get to where we all wanted to be. And I know many of you that knew Swamiji, this was what we came into this life to find, someone who could bring us closer to what we wanted to be. I was reading recently, or listening actually, to a talk, a story about the life of Andrew Wyeth. And in there's this little part of the story where this grandmother's talking to her granddaughter, and she has all these shells. And she picks out this one beautiful shell, and she said, you know, mollusks, Swami used to talk about mollusks. They go like this. That's what they do with their whole life. They just move. Anyway, it's very funny. But anyway, so these mollusks are in these shell, and she said, and then when they grow, they keep growing, and the shell becomes too small, and they have to go find a bigger shell. And the granddaughter says, well, what if they don't want to leave that shell? And she said, well, they don't want to leave that shell. I guess they have two choices. They can be very brave and go out and find another shell, or they can stay in this broken shell. And I thought, oh my God, that's exactly what Swamiji did for us. He brought us out. I shouldn't say he brought us out. He gave us the opportunity for us to get out of that little shell that we have created for ourselves, or we did create for ourselves, to show it there's something bigger, there's something we need to do that will bring us closer to God. And that's what he did all the time. And there was so many, I have so many examples, but I wanted to just mention a few things. Like after the fire in 1976, he came back from Hawaii. Usha was saying he was gone. He was in Hawaii. He came right away back when he found out what had happened to Ananda. And, you know, somebody said, well, why did all the houses burn down? And these crummy little teepees and trailers, they're still there, and all the houses, and the householders lost everything. And he said, because, well, he didn't say because. He said, we are not here for ourselves. When people on the ridge, when people in town, they hear about this little hippie community up here on the ridge, and they lost their trailers, and they won't think anything of it. If they hear that householders, people with children, lost their homes, everything they knew, and they still had joy, then that's all that matters. We are here as examples. We are here as examples of our Guru. How do we live? We are living the teachings, and part of the teachings is even-minded and cheerful in all things, and we can say it easily, but how do we live it? And he said, this is how we live it. There was a time when I was very ill, and I was up in my room, and we lived at the Hermitage at that point, and Swamiji had just had heart operation, and I wasn't doing anything. I was just not feeling well. And he called us up about 10 o'clock at night, and he said, would you come down here, and I need a foot rub. He really liked foot rubs. And so we said, sure. And I said to Vidura, how am I going to get down there? I just don't know. I was so sick. And he said, come on, we need to go. So we went downstairs, and Swamiji was in his chair, and Vidura sat there, and I just went over and took his feet and started rubbing his feet. And all of a sudden, this thought came to me, I could die doing this. I am so sick. I could die. I have no energy. I don't know. And then the thought came to me, so? So what better way to go than rubbing your guru's feet? I mean, Swamiji was like my guru, master, my Satguru. Swami would always say, no, I'm not the guru, but some of us felt that way anyway. And he didn't say anything. It was complete silence the whole time I was there. We were there. And then finally I finished. I went upstairs. And then I thought, he didn't need to have his feet rubbed. He was teaching me about energy. He was teaching me that no matter what you're doing, you can put out more energy. You can put out more love. You can put out more compassion. You don't have to stay in that broken shell. You can get beyond. And he kept showing us one time, I've told you this before, during the lawsuit era, I was very protective of Swamiji. I didn't want anyone to hurt him. In my mind, I was always not wanting anyone to hurt him, and they were. And so he asked me to drive him to town one day, and we went to town, and we're just talking, and he said, would you like a coffee? And I said, sure. I didn't drink coffee, but I said, sure. And he said, well, where would you like to go? And I said, anywhere but that place. And there was a place. And he said, oh, well, that's where we'll go then. Because he knew that I didn't want to go there because they spoke badly of Swamiji. In fact, I may have even said to him, no, Swamiji, they don't care about you. They're saying these things that aren't true there. He said, then let's go there. Always courage. Stand up for your beliefs and be courageous, and don't let anything keep you from being who you are. I also wanted to tell you about a dream, and it was probably in this time period. There was 12 years of struggle and lots of growth and fabulous energy with Swamiji. 2 stories I'll tell you. One actually was about Swamiji, and he was about to go into this situation that was, for all of us, horrendous. And he went upstairs, and we were in Palo Alto, and he went upstairs, and he said, I'm just going to go meditate. And he went up, and he came down the next morning. He said, I meditated all night, talking to Master. He wants me to go through with this. He said, okay, so let's go. No whining, no, oh, do I have to do this? Or how could Master do this to me? It was all, this is what he wants. Let's go. And it was just this beautiful energy of going to do this thing that nobody wanted him to do. And he came back and it was done and blah, blah, blah. But just that absolute faith, if Master wants me to do this, then this is what I need to do. He always would refer back to whatever was happening. Does Master want me to do this? And if he felt he did, then it was all fine. What's the big deal? So I had this dream during this time, and those of you that knew Leela and lived at the village knew that she drove this little red car. I think she called it Angelina. And so in this dream, I was driving her little red car. And I was driving down the highway, and it was all good, and I was happy, and everything was fine. And then all of a sudden, I realized there were these trucks. And there I was surrounded all of a sudden by these big Mack trucks. And so first of all, there was one here. Then I noticed there was one behind me. Then I noticed there's one in front of me. And I couldn't go anywhere. I was trapped. So you can figure out the significance of all this. And I was trapped. And I didn't know what to do. Remember when Swamiji was writing the Bhagavad Gita, and he tried so hard to get all his notes and things of when he was with Master, and he couldn't get those notes. And then he had this dream, and in this dream, Master said, don't forget the skylight. And he realized that he could get that inspiration to write the Gita as Master wanted it written by opening up to the skylight, by opening up to other possibilities than just what's here in front of us in the world. That's what happened to me in the dream. I heard this voice saying, "Look up." And I looked up, and there was Swamiji, just sitting up there in the sky. Our dream's great. And sitting up there in the sky and with his hands out. And so I looked up, and there he was, and I followed him. And Angelina and I went up over the trucks and over to the other side, to freedom, to peace, to understanding that it isn't all going to happen right here. Swami would always give us another way to find out how to get out of a predicament or something that was going on. And the last story I wanted to tell, and these wonderful people have said it, that he wouldn't just come out very often and tell you what to do. That wasn't his way. He wanted you to figure it out so you could grow. And I don't mean to say that all my experiences were sad and hard and miserable, because they weren't. But here I was again. And Vidura and I were living in Swamiji's house at that time. He was over in Italy. And I was having a problem. And I was feeling forlorn, misunderstood, hurt. And Swami called, and I was telling him about all this. And then I started crying, and I was crying and crying and crying. And he just said, "I'm so sorry, Durga. I'm so sorry." Over and over, "I'm so sorry." And I've told you part of it before, and that's when he said, "Durga, the tests never end. As you get stronger, the tests will be stronger until you reach liberation." But it was with this complete compassion, this complete empathy of where I was, what I was going through, and not the teachings. We know the teachings. We're not supposed to do that. We're supposed to go inside and know that this test is our test. We know all that. But there are times when it's just hard. And Swami was just there. "I'm so sorry." That's what these wonderful people have said too. It's so much love, so much compassion, so much patience, so much understanding. And that's how we grew. And he took us from that little shell, broke it apart, and as we grow, he would just give us another one and another one and another one. So I think all of us owe our lives to him. I was thinking, what would have happened if we hadn't come to Ananda? I don't know about you, but I know where I was going, a very ordinary kind of a life, a beautiful life perhaps, but very ordinary. And then Swamiji made it extraordinary. So much gratitude to him and to all of you who have also helped me grow in the ways I needed to. So God bless you.
Good evening. It's so wonderful to be here with you on this evening. Swamiji's coming to Master to take discipleship, the anniversary of that time. I, somewhat like Swamiji, traveled here and arrived on July 19th of 1970, traveling around the country with my autobiography in the backpack and looking for Master, visiting Mount Washington to get meditation lessons and stopping at Tassajara Zen Center, and heard that, Yogananda has a place up in Grass Valley. So I came here with the last of my money. I wasn't even able to buy lunch after the Sunday service, but I came and Swami did the service as he did every week. And it was so wonderful. He would chant and sing Bengali songs in his beautiful voice and speak and talk and was so gracious. And it was really nice. And so I wanted to stay at Ananda, but didn't have the means to do that immediately, and was recommended I find a place to camp down at Edwards Crossing. And Swami offered to give me a ride after church down. He was heading down to the Bay Area. I came to find out later he would go down and teach yoga classes all over the Bay Area, Sunday night through Friday night, probably to bring in funds to help maintain the retreat. At that time, the meditation retreat was the heart and soul of Ananda, and what we now know as the village was called the farm, and it was the beginnings of the community, but it was very undeveloped. Swami gave me a ride, and going around the back way to Edwards Crossing, if you've been to the meditation retreat lately up Jackass Fat Road, it's like 15 miles of that to come around the other direction into Grass Valley. But he talked to us and asked me about who was I and about himself, and I just realized that he was just a guy being himself. He was a great, great man, is what he talked in the service. But I heard a tape earlier today of him, Swamiji, on the similar anniversary, speaking of the saint in India, Ramakrishna, and how he was just who he was, no pretenses, no putting himself up as the big guru on the pedestal, and that's the way Swami was. And I just felt at that moment, I can follow this guy, I can follow Swamiji, and I have been loyal to this day. There were times at the farm when I began living there, where there were some people that saw his personality as who he was and would want to take umbrage of this thing or that. And so I went up to Swami. He drove in, and I said, "Oh, Swami, I just wanted you to know that not everybody at the farm is against you." And he said, "Oh, that's so sweet." And he said, "If there's ever anything, you have any questions, just don't hesitate, just anything you want." And I said, "Oh, well, the people are saying you want to turn this into an ashram. What do they mean by that?" He says, "Oh." I said, "Oh, I blew it." But he looks up and he says, "Oh, it's the 4 ashrams of life, the student and the householder and the sannyasi and the forest dweller. We're wanting to create a place where all of life is manifest together." And I thought, wow, that's so great, Swami. We had some meetings to try to create what they called the farm charter, that I was fortunate to attend many of those meetings. Swami was away, and for some it was an effort to try to create sort of a democratic way to outvote Swami if they wanted to. And I and many of us, most Jatish and Shivani and Jaya, Helene were there, and I was probably more like the fly on the wall, but we went and had a meeting when he came back from India, and he said, "Oh, wonderful, and we can have people from Ayodhya represented and people from the meditation retreat." And he just flipped it like that, and that was the beginning of the village council. It was really wonderful. At that meeting, I just have a personal experience I feel to share. I had started a dairy at that time, and I had been up all night working to build a milking processing room in the dairy barn, and I came to the meeting from that, and when we were finished with the meeting, he said, "Well, now we're going to have another meeting about the publishing company or something, and so whoever's not part of that, now you can go." And so I get up, and I'm standing in the middle of the room, and he just looks at me and says, "When you go to a meeting with people, you shouldn't wear dirty clothes." And starts just, taking me out. And normally I would, "Well, I was up all night, what?" But I just looked him in the eye, and I just felt wave after wave after wave of love pouring over me. And it was amazing. And then he just turned it into a more generic conversation and changed it all. It was wonderful. I'm sure you're beginning to see a pattern of everyone has a different personal experience with Swamiji. At first I thought, well, I wasn't really part of the church or the church, working in the Sangha or the publishing company or whatever. I haven't really had that much close contact with Swami. But when I look back at my life, I've had so much. My my first trip to Disneyland was with Swamiji, riding down the ramp of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Wow, this is my kind of ride. There's Swami's head right in front of me. So then we ride on the Jungle Cruise, and Swami says, wow, this is my kind of ride. Yeah, I could tell many stories, but over the years, I've had the chance to be with Swami in the streets of Carmel, asking him at dinners, what's the future of Ananda? And he says, love and Kriya Yoga. And he said, it'll change. But, the more things change, the more they remain the same. We've been to Assisi, been to his home in Assisi, walked the streets of Assisi. We've been to his home in New Delhi and in Pune. We had our college students when he first moved into his home in Pune there for a week, getting the place all ready, and had a delightful satsang with them when he first arrived to move into the home there. And one time in Assisi, they were having an auction where they were raising funds. It might have been for the first Temple of Light there, something similar. And he'd offered up a few items for it, and they were auctioning things off, and I got a necktie of his. And so the next day he was leading the Sunday service, and at the Sunday service, he decided that he brought up a chair, and he decided he would be the blesser for every single person, and that was a lot, several hundred, I believe, but there was a lot of people, and every single one he blessed, and it was moving along. And when I came up, he pulled me close and whispered in my ear, and the rest of that day, everyone was, what did Swami say? What did he tell you? Was it? I just can't say. It was really personal. And so, finally that evening, it was just too much. So I said, okay, what did Swami say? He grabbed me by the tie and pulled me up, and he said, nice tie. Swami was always so joyful. I know, we're here to celebrate his discipleship, but also our own. And, the way to tune into Swami, most of you, many of you have had your own personal experiences with Swami and could come up and tell some stories. There may be some of you that haven't met him, they know him through videos or audios or whatever. But the way is attunement, to tune into Swami, to tune into who he was and how he was. I owe everything I do. I haven't written oratorios or books, but I've followed how does he do what he does, and I make buildings, I make spaces. When Swami passed, I remember the night we got the call, Swami has passed. And we just said, oh. And we just called and got the next plane out of town and flew straight to Assisi, straight to Rome and to Assisi to be there, because I didn't know when he would pass or where, but I knew when he passed I would just drop everything and go there. And it was really moving to be there, the flowers, and just to be in the presence of his body, but his soul was there. And And my last word from Swami was an audio vision when we were beginning this building, and it was a struggle to get it all moving. We were on the foundation or the beginnings of the framing, and he just said, "Nakula, I'm very pleased with how this is going." And so I knew we would be able to succeed with his blessing. I was at two talks that he gave that stand out to me. One, the talk that was most inspiring to me of any was the opening ceremony of the Pisa, Italy Ananda meditation group. And it was 100% spoken in Italian. I didn't understand one word except Yogananda or Yukteswar or Babaji. You know, it's the same in any language. And it just was so moving. And but he gave a talk in another place here in the States, and the person introducing him was somewhat boastful in building up their own things they'd been doing as part of introducing Swamiji. And he just came out and it was a talk about how to be a disciple and the yoga teachings, and he just came out and said, "Well, the first thing you do is you get rid of this ego." And much later we thought, maybe he was talking to that fellow that was introducing him. But he would always have that laugh. You know, he would always say, "Never grow old, it's not worth it." You can see his laugh in this picture. But, you know, you can tune in and you know, you want to let go of the ego. You want to do what you do. You know, you may do things that is part of Swami's direct work. You may do things that are tangential or supportive of the work here, or whatever you do. Do it what you do the way he did what he did. You may not have, we all may not have the beautiful singing voice, but they would sing, Swami would sing the most beautiful voice. And to be a disciple of a great master is to listen in your heart and watch what they're doing. They may, like many here tonight have said, they may not say, "Now look at you, do it like this." You have to pay attention and watch and hear the words and serve, and there you have it. So we will now join in. Durga will lead us in a discipleship ceremony for all of us here, and enjoy this sacred evening.
So why doesn't everyone stand? And as Badri said earlier, if you haven't taken discipleship vow, but you are feeling something in your heart about this path or Master Swamiji, you can say it in your mind, and you can say it along with all of us. I'm going to start where I will read the beginning part, and then at some point I'll say, "Please repeat after me," and then everyone will repeat. And then you take your flowers, and I believe the musicians are going to chant softly, and you can come up with your flower and place it anywhere here on the altar. And I have to say this though, where's Surya? I gotta mention the frame. So Surya, you've got to notice this frame up here, so Swami with wings. And it's wonderful. And so if you do come up, notice the frame with wings. Thank you, Suri. Okay, here we go. Actually, do you want to read this part? Why don't you read this part, and then at this point I can do it. Just read, start right there. From here till it's-
Heavenly Father,
No, actually, you're not repeating at this point. You're just listening.
Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, Beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Teshwar, Paramhansa Yogananda, I bow to you all. Divine Mother, I come before thee today, having long sought thy eternal light.
Can you step to the mic?
Long pondered the eternal truths, long followed the winding path that leads to thee. I have walked with my own strength, all too seldom with thine. I have walked with the thought, I want this from life, these answers, that guidance, this pathway or that. But I've seen that as often as I made claims on life, it eluded me. As often as I presumed on thy will, it turned away from me. Ah, too long, Mother, I have sought thee for myself, not for thy love. I know now that without thy strength added to mine, infusing it, I shall never find thee. Thine is the power, the grace, the infinite glory. With loving faith now I seek thee, through the ray of thy light that thou hast offered me. I will ascend to thee, not by my power alone, but by the power of thy infinite love. I am thine, Mother. Be thou eternally mine.
Now please repeat after me. I offer myself in service and devotion to your cause, and to the ray of the divine light, as it is represented by your channels, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Teshwar, and Paramhansa Yogananda. Accept me into this family of self-realization. And make me also, through them, an instrument of thy blessings. Thus as I receive, may others be blessed also to receive. I will join my energies to those of my Guru Bhais, my spiritual family on earth. I will cooperate with them, and especially with the living representatives and guides of my divine line of gurus. Discipline me, guide me, purify me. Teach me to attune myself to thy ray. Until at last, through daily meditation, service and devotion, I unite my soul with thy infinite spirit. Now take your flower and come up as you feel to, in any order, and offer your flower with devotion at the altar.
Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. Listen to my soul song. Listen to my heart song. In secret in my soul, I will gather blossoms for thee, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet, dipping them in devotion. I will lay them at thy feet. shaming the white lotus in purity, shaming the white lotus in purity, beyond all duality. Guru, image of Brahma, deliver us from delusion. Guru, image of Brahma, deliver us from delusion. Think in thy heart, lotus feet of thy Guru. Think in thy heart, lotus feet of thy Guru. If you want to cross the ocean of delusion, if you want to cross the ocean of delusion, shaming the white lotus in purity, shaming the white lotus in purity, beyond all duality. Guru, image of Brahma, deliver us from delusion. Guru, image of Brahma, deliver us from delusion. Think in thy heart, lotus feet of thy Guru. Think in thy heart, lotus feet of thy Guru. If you want to cross the ocean of delusion, if you want to cross the ocean of delusion, shaming the white lotus in purity, shaming the white lotus in purity, beyond all duality. Guru, image of Brahma, deliver us from delusion. 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 Think in thy heart, lotus feet of thy Guru. Think in thy heart, lotus feet of thy Guru. Think in thy heart, lotus feet of thy Guru.
Let's close with a prayer, and please leave in silence when you go, those that wish to stay and meditate. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, Friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Paramhansa Yogananda, all saints, dear Swamiji, we bow to you all. Divine Mother, may thy love shine forever on the sanctuary of our devotion, and may we be able to awaken thy love in all hearts. Om. Peace. Amen.
Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. I will never forget thee. I will never forsake thee. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen to my heart's song. Listen, listen, listen.